When I played Pokemon Ruby as a kid, I also played it with my strategy guide. And I remember I would go through the strategy guide and look at all the different Pokemon in the Pokédex. That was my favorite part because I got to see all their evolutions and see their attack and defense and their base stats, what move sets they were going to learn. And this was in the early days of the internet, right? Cerebi.net was just starting to take off, right? I didn't have computer access all the time. So it was really cool having that book around that I could take with me no matter where it was. And I loved going through all the different Pokemon in this book. And I remember coming across this one Pokemon, Shedinja, who stood out to me because he had the ability called Wonder Guard. And if you're not familiar, Wonder Guard is where the Pokemon doesn't take any damage except for super effective attacks. You might think, oh, wow, this is OP or broken. No, it's not because Shedinja unfortunately has only 1 HP. So he gets susceptible to anything, any kind of super effective attack insta kills him, any sandstorm, weather, or spikes, hail, stealth rock, like all that stuff just kills him. So you really have to be, especially in the competitive scene, you have to know how to play him. But in game too, right? You send him out against something, and then the enemy happens to have some random rock move, and then boom, you're dead. There was definitely downfalls with it, but I remember seeing this and I was like, oh, this is so cool. I want to try out this Pokemon. And so, I read about how to get him. But basically, you have to evolve your Nincada to Ninjask. And then with the Ninjask, you just make sure you have another Pokeball and another space in your inventory. Then, boom, you'll have a Shedinja as well. And so I did that and I got the Shedinja. And I freaking loved it. I loved using him in the playthrough. I loved fighting the enemies who you knew couldn't do anything, and they would just throw out random attacks. Oh, Shedinja's Wonder Guard bypasses this. Shedinja's Wonder Guard bypasses that. I'm like, huh, sucks to suck, bitch. To a random NPC. But I love doing that. So I love leveling him up and getting him through there. And so I specifically remember him being very clutch in the Elite Four because there were some Pokemon, I don't remember what the Pokemon were, that I was completely kind of defenseless against. And then Shedinja was like the one that stood out between me and victory. And he got me through because the enemy couldn't touch anything. I think Steven may have had a couple Pokemon, maybe even his Metagross. I don't remember. But I remember him being very clutch. And I was like, oh, this guy is super, super cool. And I always found myself leaning towards these gimmick type of Pokemon because flash forward a couple of years later, Zoroark had released. And I'd gone to a Pokemon X and Y tournament. Actually, not a couple years, let's say a decade later. I'd gone to a Pokemon X and Y tournament, and I had a whole team based around Zoroark. Basically, like he would masquerade as Gengar, and I would fool people, and people would hit him with like a ghost move, and only to not be effective. And then Zoroark would like a Dark Pulse or whatever. But I like doing that. And then similarly with Shedinja, I remember I used to go on Smoke or like show Pokemon Showdown and make these Shedinja-based teams, and then try to play around Shedinja. And yeah, like I remember I had a rapid spinner on my team. I would have like a weather clearer, basically like just trying to make sure the Shedinja had a focus sash, basically doing all the things I could to basically set up around Shedinja, right? Because and it was so funny because some opponents I would play, they would literally just quit. Let's say I got my Shedinja out and they couldn't do anything. You would just see this person has left the chat because I beat him. I beat him with Shedinja. Obviously, other times I would get rolled too, but it was really satisfying getting a Shedinja sweep off where I would Swords Dance and then X Scissor or Shadow Sneak. This is in the newer generations just because Shedinja didn't have a Shadow Sneak or X Scissor actually back in the early gens. So they buffed up my boy a little bit. And now I'm about to play Pokemon Omega Ruby, and I've just started it. And so I'm very excited to get Shedinja back on my team because it's going to bring back all of the nostalgia from I had as a kid, right? Because when I think back to these video game memories with Pokemon Ruby and the competitive scene, I look at them as fond times. Yeah, these were good times. And so now I get to kind of relive that nostalgia again and really connect with my childhood. And I found that's been a really key happiness thing for me because I think as people get older, they lose track of what makes them childlike, that childlike wonder. They lose track of the things that they used to enjoy because we get into job and marriage and financial responsibilities and family obligations and work and responsibility, like all that stuff, right? Adult stuff. And it's nice to just be able to just disconnect from all that and be a kid again, because I think we're all kids at heart. We just pile on so much stuff to it that that kid underneath gets lost. So this helps me bring that. And I found it's really helpful for my happiness. So yeah, I'm curious if you've ever experienced that too, right? Curious also what your favorite Pokemon is as well. Shedinja is mine and will forever be my favorite. But yeah, in other news, definitely check out Cosplay Couture. It's our fashion runway show where my goal is to make fashion more, or cosplay more mainstream, and elevate it to mainstream fashion, because I think the cosplay community, we do a lot of hard work. I see my fellow cosplayers really put in so much effort and time into their cosplays, and just didn't get recognized. And I want to give them that stage, that platform for them, for their work to get recognized. We haven't seen a Shedinja cosplay yet on there. Never say never. Maybe one day we will. But yeah, definitely check that out. We have shows in New York and Miami, so you can buy tickets to go there. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.